Okay, can you hear me? Good evening. Tonight we speak English. Okay? So it's a great pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Professor Neil Leach. I've met Neil a couple of times before, I think once in SCI-Arc in Los Angeles many, many years ago, and more recently in China. But I followed his work with great interest before and since. Neil's one of the most prolific and influential architectural theorists working today. He currently directs the Doctor of Design program at Florida International University. He's also taught at the Architectural Association School of Architecture, the Harvard GSD, the Columbia GSAPP, Cornell University, IaaC in Spain, and SCI-Arc. He's the co-founder of DigitalFUTURES, an online educational platform, a former researcher for NASA, where he developed 3D printing techniques for the Moon and Mars, and a member of the Academia Europaea. He's published more than 40 books, I think close to 50 at the moment, on architectural theory and digital design, translated into 8 different languages, and he's the translator of Leon Battista Alberti's seminal On the Art of Building in 10 Books, under the direction of the late, great Joseph Rykwert, who passed away 3 days ago. In recent years, Neil's focus has been on AI and its importance for architectural design. AI is, of course, a much wider issue than architecture. In the last couple of years, AI has transformed the world, and it seems to be only accelerating, raising the possibility that many human activities will become irrelevant. We can only hope that this will be liberating, much like the way that the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century freed us from many difficult, dangerous, boring jobs and made high-quality products available to everyone. But the challenge of AI is that it affects domains usually thought to be requiring human creativity and therefore could never be replaced by machines. That's no longer the case. AI-generated music is shockingly good. The use of AI to write essay texts presents huge benefits as well as huge problems, as any professor receiving essays from students knows well. In design, the creation of AI architecture can be used to create seductive, inspiring images with tremendous potential for use and abuse. Neil calls AI arguably the most significant invention of humankind, and I agree. But he goes further. He calls it a radically different form of intelligence, an alien intelligence that will far exceed human intelligence. So whatever your own views, this lecture is going to provide essential knowledge and warnings for those of you who will graduate in the coming years. But before I hand over to Neil, I want to introduce my colleague, Professor Akihisa Hirata, who you all know very well, who is going to give a short presentation about his own recent design work that incorporates AI and computational processes. Neil will then speak, and there will be time for discussion afterwards. If you're confused, you can ask a question in Japanese, and we will help translate. Okay, thank you, Professor Hirata.
Good evening, everybody. Today I'm a little bit have some pressure to talk about very complicated thing around AI and architecture. So I hope these images help me to understand about my work. And in the beginning, I like to introduce shortly about my work. I am an architect and also the professor in Kyoto University. And this is some of my work. This is building in Tokyo. It contains the house on top with the contemporary gallery on the bottom. And this is the library and museum in Gunma Prefecture. And this is an ongoing project in Nerima in Tokyo, which is like a museum and library as well. And this is the recent competition project which we won in Yamagata Prefecture in north part of Japan, which is the auditorium. This is a recent finished project in Tokyo, facing to the Omotesando and Meiji Street, facing to the very big crossing. And, I designed the facade and the rooftop for that building. And today I will introduce two of my work. One is the Ojiya complex, which is in Niigata Prefecture, in the north part of Japan. And this part of Japan is famous for its heavy snow, like 3 meters in the winter. And the population is not so big, like 35,000 people or so. Comparing to the Shibuya in Tokyo, it's very little people. And this was the competition project in the first stage. And what was requested by the client was very unique because they requested to have the relationship between the information space and the real space. And it was a very difficult question. But at the time, I introduced the idea consists of float, anchor, roof. And the float is the moving furniture, like a shelf or some other instruments. But today I don't talk about this float so much. Maybe I just talk about the anchor. Anchor is the place for the people to gather around the book. So this building is not just for the library. This is the place for the people to come together in many ways. So, and also there were so many discussions between the people in the city about this building and also the city making. And through the process of this discussion, they have many activities. We were expected to make more than 100 activities, but that means we have to make so many space. But in that case, we will exceed so much for the limitation. So maybe we have to do something, some schedule, some how do you call some kind of system. But the question is, what kind of different anchors do they need? What type or what number? So, according to this question, we investigated the suitable number and suitable type of the spaces for all those activities they requested. So we investigate the difference distance between the activities with 3 different criteria. This is one criteria about the space. This is action, and this is the item. And then we layered all these 3 things together in one network using some kind of computational process. So this indicates somehow the distance between the activities so that we can know which groups are possibly included in the same anchor. And we find out the groups in the network. Then we make these anchors, and then we ask the people about the relationship between the anchors. And based on the words from the people, I made another spring model network to help us to plan, to plan the suitable relationship between the anchors. So using this tool, we make we draw the plan like this. So somehow this network drawn by the computer, and then we had a human thinking, and then ask people about the relationship, and then we make the tools in the computer, and then we use the tools to design all the relationship between the anchors. So this is not actually using the AI, just using the computational process using the grasshopper, but it's somehow related to the AI kind of thinking. So I just I would like to talk about this process. And the roof, tonight I don't talk so much about the roof. I designed the roof like a ground form to contain this floor space and anchors just under the roof like ground or the mountain. And they can see this beautiful mountain from here. So that the place will be somewhere like ancient square where people get together to do many type of different things in the same place. And recently we just finished this building. So I don't have so much photo for right now, but I brought some of the photos. And in the opening of the event, many people come from this city. So they celebrated the opening all together. Okay, then I will talk about another project in Taiwan. Now I'm doing the project in the Taiwan University, which is the 100-year memorial place for the Taiwan University. And this was the competition project as well. And at that time, we were requested to make a big museum where all the separated museums in the university will get together. And also another program like auditorium and the galleries and the accommodation and etc. are all together in the one building to make a big center in the south of Taiwan University, like another big centers in the university. And then I don't talk about the detail, but at that time I proposed the system with the figures and stripe. The figure is the small exhibition space, which includes certain fields, and the shape of the figure is related to the field, scalar field, and then so this figure is situated on the stripes, so that we can make the place where you can feel all the knowledge in the Taiwan University come together, and you can feel all the spaces. So maybe I can show you the animation. Since the competition was held in the end of December, so I tried to make a strong impression. So I used this Beethoven music, and yeah, something like that. So at that time, the bigness of this building is like 30,000 square meter, with all the related programs around the museum project. So this is open to the public. So many different type of people can come into the museum and you can see all the knowledge inside the university. And around these figures, we have many different type of open space where you can have an exhibition and also the discussion around the exhibiting things, and also the performances, and also some lectures, and so on and so on. So everything was curated in one package, can be curated in one package, not just having some exhibition, but having some total experience around these knowledges in the Taiwan University. Okay, something like this, and we won. We won the competition, and this was the project at the time. But the president of the university changed just after the competition, and then decided to make the project smaller. So in the first stage, we have many different genres of museum coming into this new museum. But in the new scheme, they decided just to have temporal exhibition in this building, not having all the genres inside the building. So the square meter becomes like 6,000 square meter from 30,000 square meter. Yeah, kind of pity. But if in case we have to have this kind of white cube flexible box for the temporary exhibition, I would like to contain something feeling like knowledge of Taiwan University. So I decided to make some strange things called fragments into the building, so that we can make many unique type of exhibition, or also some activities around these fragments. But the question was how we can make suitable form or suitable figure for the fragments. Because I intended to make something feeling like Taiwan University, but how was the question. And I tried to make some kind of conversation between the human and AI at that time. Because we had collected all very different sources and very different shapes of these genres in the first stage. So we have many data. We have many images around Taiwan University museum. So we put it into AI, all those images, and then make a plot from these images by means of AI. So we have these words, and then so it's like for instance, physics becoming like this. So all those words are correct, and then we make by the text mining, making some kind of tree of words, and we actually cut this tree here to have 6 branches, because we have 6 fragments in our scheme. So according to these branches, we asked the AI to produce 3 keywords for the one branches, and we get very strange and mysterious keywords from the from AI. Like, for instance, F2 have marine life, paper cut art, oval-shaped mirror. I don't know why, but these contain some kind of feeling around the words, I believe. And then I asked AI to design something out of these two keywords, but actually these are only images, and many different type of kind of interesting images were created, but we don't know how to use these images. So then humankind, we designed using these keywords one shape. So somehow we can create these 6 different type of fragments from these different keywords. So it's kind of a process between the human and AI, like a conversation, and making some interesting relationship between the human activities and the imagination and the space or the shape of the architecture. But I'm not so sure this is the correct way to create this type of relationship, or correct way to create the Taiwan University-ness. But yeah, and we are just enjoying somehow this kind of newly coming tool to use this kind of relationship between the computer and us. Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation. You probably will have some questions, but I think we save all the questions until the end. We have more of a group discussion. Unless there's something really urgent, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Neil Leach. Okay.
Thanks, Tom. It's quite a difficult act to follow. That's a beautiful work, especially that first project. I want to go to Tokyo. I didn't see it when I was to Tokyo last, but that was beautiful, beautiful. So AI has been used in basically 2 different ways. For some people, it is tools, and that's what architects use it for. But it's also a broad field of research. Computer scientists, neuroscientists, looking at the question of intelligence and trying to develop something that emulates and sometimes even surpasses the human brain. And I'm going to focus a little bit on that. What I also want to do is, as I know Kyoto has produced so many Nobel Prize winners, 2 weeks ago we had 2 Nobel Prize winners working in AI, and I want to talk about them. But maybe just a few words, first of all, about Joseph Rykwert, because I was working on Alberti. He published 1988, and that was when I first came across computation. I was working in the computer science department at the University of Cambridge, surrounded by these incredible geeks who had no social skills, but were doing the most incredible thing. At that time, I could see already that this world of computation was going to have a huge impact on architecture. And it wasn't about style, it was about operating in a different way. Anyway, and so you might wonder how I got from Alberti to AI. I think the seeds of that were in what I was doing with Alberti. I am convinced that if Alberti was around now, he would be absolutely obsessed with AI. He wrote a book of mathematics. And I'm equally convinced that if Brunelleschi was around now, he'd be obsessed with robotic fabrication. And by a strange coincidence, Alberti's name begins in A and ends in I. I'm just showing you some runway stuff that I produced last week. I'm sure a lot of you here are doing similar things. I've updated what I have been doing just recently, because 2 weeks ago something astonishing happened. On the one hand, Elon Musk introduced his humanoid robots, which seem to be about to revolutionize how we work. And he also introduced his robo taxi, which apparently will be coming on stream. Until 2 weeks ago, I was living in Venice Beach in California, where the Google headquarters was only 100 meters away, and we had all these self-driving taxis everywhere. It was crazy to see cars without a driver in them. So in some ways, this is going to be the future. And I just want to make one comment that I'll come back to in a moment about this, and that is that these tools will be very helpful. They will really help our lives. And Musk himself talks about how we are all cyborgs. Every single person here is a cyborg. We have a machine extension in our phone, our computer, and everything. We are already superhuman. And I think the first research which began to point that out, how it's going to help us, this is a very crude graph that came out from some research by some sociologists at Harvard and MIT. And there's a difference between the blue mountain on the left and the green mountain on the right. Those on the left, that's what those who do not use AI can achieve. And on the right, those that do use AI, what they can achieve. And there's a difference in both the quality and the quantity and also the speed of production that is very significant. It's almost 50%. This is actually a very important slide. I know it's very crude, but really important slide. In the future, we will not be able to avoid using AI, just as we can't avoid using spell check or calculators. We will have to use it, and if we want to enter competitions, we will need it to produce good designs, I think. But I want to tell a story through these two people today. Both of them are Nobel Prize winners, both of them from the UK. Both of them studied at the University of Cambridge, and both of them are convinced that the secret to AI is by understanding the brain. And I also think the secret to the brain is by understanding AI. I think, for me, more than anything, AI is a mirror in which we can understand how the human mind works. So jokingly, I was saying the other day that I also studied at Cambridge. I also work on AI, and I also did neuroscience. I'm also British. I'm waiting for my Nobel Prize. But actually, seriously, there was someone who should have got a Nobel Prize, who also was British, also studied at Cambridge, and that is Alan Turing. He died in 1954, and we didn't know what he had done until 1970 because the Official Secrets Act made it secret. But this guy, we know from the movies now what he's done, but he was also the first person to imagine the possibility of connecting computers to intelligence. The term itself was coined in 1955 for an event that took place in 1956 in Dartmouth College, where all the smartest and the brightest in the States at the time got together, including this character here called Marvin Minsky, who went on to work at the MIT Media Lab, seen here on the right-hand side, in the middle again, when the survivors met again in 2006 for their reunion. And when they started, they thought they would solve the basic problem within 2 years, but it was a complete disaster. It was during the Cold War. They wanted to understand what the Soviets were speaking, and AI was useless at translation then. It's very good now. They tried to translate "out of sight is out of mind" into Russian and back into English, and it came out as "an invisible lunatic." So everyone was joking, AI is useless. And in fact, in 2006, when they got back together, and John McCarthy is the guy here who invented who coined the term artificial intelligence. It's not a very good term. It's synthetic intelligence, and as soon as you use the word intelligence, you anthropomorphize it. But anyway, when they got back together in 2006, they all agreed they had achieved nothing. And they all predicted that in the next 50 years, they'd also achieve very little. But part of the problem, why they hadn't achieved very much, was actually Marvin Minsky. There were different approaches towards AI in the first 50 years, and the dominant approach was symbolic AI that was based on logic, and they had completely dismissed neural networks, which had been there at the beginning. Pitts and McCulloch had worked on neural networks, and they weren't getting very far. But by a strange coincidence, 2006 was about the time that things started really happening in the world of AI, and they started really happening with neural networks for one particular reason, and that is that by an accident, a complete accident, the history of AI is a history of accidents, they discovered that GPUs, graphic processing units, would really improve computers, make them much faster, much more powerful. And that changed the world entirely. And there was one person who was really responsible for all that, and it was Geoffrey Hinton. He's born in the UK. He's the great-great-grandson of George Boole of Boolean geometry fame. He studied architecture for 2 days at the University of Cambridge. 2 days. And then he decided architecture was not for him. My friends at Foster & Partners say he's smart. It took me 5 years to realize architecture was not for me. Anyway, he moved into natural sciences and eventually went into the world of AI because he was interested in the brain, how the brain works. And because of that, he was obsessed with using neural networks. He was convinced that neural networks would be the way forward. But they were completely out of fashion, totally out of fashion. But eventually with GPUs, things began to happen. There are other reasons as well. I won't go into them. But around 2006, things began to develop. And now we're in a different stage where we're using neural networks. It's called deep learning. And deep learning is a subset of machine learning, is a subset of artificial intelligence, like Russian dolls nested inside each other. But it was in 2012 that we began to realize exactly what they could do. Geoffrey Hinton and a team of his PhD students, including Ilya Sutskever, who's very famous right now because of OpenAI, entered the competition to see who could have a system that could recognize images most effectively. Now, we all have facial recognition on our phones. It's nothing special. But in 2012, we didn't. We didn't have any of that. And Geoffrey Hinton's team came along with neural networks, and everyone was joking about neural networks. It was like a steam engine. It was an obsolete technology. But imagine the shock when they won this competition by a country mile, by a huge amount. Fei-Fei Li, who organized the competition, in her autobiography, described this moment when they win, devastatingly win, and she said, maybe she's exaggerating, it was as though the world speed record was beaten by 100 miles an hour by someone driving a Honda Civic. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but nobody expected neural networks to be doing these things. Anyway, what they're able to do, and these are the hidden layers, and there could be up to 5,000 hidden layers, hence the term deep learning, and it basically takes the pixels and it processes them. These are called neurons, these are called synapses, and then the information is governed by the weights in the synapses, and eventually it recognizes it's a bird. It's like 99% sure, never 100% sure, but it's a bird. But for computer scientists, the holy grail was to do the opposite. It wasn't to recognize an image, it was to generate an image, to synthesize an image, to hallucinate an image. And they discovered, again, almost by accident, that you could just reverse the process. So in other words, you just take a neural network and you make it work the other way around, and we have what we now know as deep dream, this completely trippy image, where everything is all over the place because information about where everything should be has been lost. Anyway, this was the first type of computer-generated images. The first exhibition was based on deep dream. Shortly after that, Ian Goodfellow, who was a PhD student in Montreal, developed the much better system, which is called GANs, Generative Adversarial Networks, where you have one neural network competing against another one. The generator is producing, out of random noise, it produces images, and the discriminator judges it against this training patch and decides whether it's convincing or not. If it rejects it, then the generator has to improve. So it's a bit like the professor with the student. That's rubbish. That's rubbish. Do it better. And eventually something comes out. Then we moved into something completely different. This is called style GANs. All of a sudden, we had something that was really quite astonishing in terms of much more accurate and so on. But meanwhile, in architecture, there was absolutely nothing happening. In 2019, I teamed up with Zaha Hadid Architects and with Google and with Refik Anadol, and I was going to propose to curate the British Pavilion and the Venice Biennale. And it was sponsored by Google. It was incredible. And we weren't even shortlisted. This was a dream team, and we weren't even shortlisted. But Refik Anadol, who's now a rock star in the world of media art, decided he would do what we had planned to do. In other words, instead of producing images of people, we would start producing images of buildings. So he fed all the images of projects by Zaha Hadid into his computer, trained the GAN, and it's a very laborious process. You have to be a computational expert and so on. And eventually, even though Zaha is no longer with us, eventually something emerges out of the computer that maybe is slightly like a design by Zaha Hadid. But it was a long process, very hard work, and the results are not so spectacular. But anyway, this, I think, is the first ever GAN-generated image of an architectural design, shall we say, which I put on the front cover of my book, which came out in December 2021, the first book in English about AI in architecture, which now is coming out in the second edition, reference to ChatGPT and all these new things and so on and so on. And there are also other forms of GANs. This is cycle GANs. This is the work of Cor Pummerblau, the work of Daniel Bolojan, who is the great genius, I think, in AI and architecture, where you take two unpaired data sets, in this case, the work of Cor Pummerblau over the years and geological formations, and you breed them, and you end up with something that kind of looks vaguely like a building. And in 2021, this was really the best that we had. This was the state of the art. It's glitchy, but it's kind of recognizable as a building, and we incorporated this on the cover of what was the fourth book to come out, AD, on architecture and artificial intelligence. That came out in April. Within about 2 months, all of these books were completely obsolete because something else happened. It was the development of diffusion models. Diffusion models work in a very different way. It's not like a GAN. You use Gaussian noise to disrupt an image in a process called diffusion, and then you repair it. And anyway, it produces something different. And it's based not on all this hard training, but it's on a pre-trained enormous neural network, and you work from text to images. So in this case, you write a prompt. In this case, an astronaut on a horse. And it's important to recognize that AI never copies. It never, ever copies. In this case, there'd probably never been an astronaut on a horse, but it's able to interpolate from images of astronauts and images of people riding horses what it would look like. I was talking about this at the Architectural Association in May of 2022, saying, when are architects going to wake up to this incredible potential? At the time, this wasn't available. DALL-E 2 was not available. Anyway, there was a voice in the audience, and it was Patrick Schumacher, who said, we're already doing this. And I didn't know this, but they've been collaborating with Refik Anadol. This was the next generation. Clearly better than the first one. Looks like it's 3D, and the textures and so on are quite good. Anyway, the rest is history, as we know. I'm sure many of you are using Midjourney, and these tools have got better and better and better. And you haven't got to be a designer to produce this. You've just got to be able to write good prompts. Anyway, now this is almost what everyone's talking about in terms of AI these days, certainly in the West. And I don't think that actually it's that important. I think these are very superficial images. I think the future of architecture in terms of AI is going to be completely different. But nonetheless, this is what we have. And maybe I could just give you my impression about AI. When I first started working on this, 2018 or something, or 2000, anyway, by 2019, I was beginning to get a bit scared because this thing was clearly incredible, but also kind of terrifying. And I felt like Elon Musk, who is using AI the whole time, but warning us that it could be the end of civilization. So I wrote to my publishers and I said, can I turn this book into 2 different books? I'm publishing with Bloomsbury. They do Harry Potter, based in Bedford Square in London. And I said, can I do 2 books? And I have one with a white cover, the one I showed you, the positive side of AI, like the angel, and one with a black cover, the devil, the Black Mirror episode of AI. And they agreed to that. And I was planning to put the black book off for a while, but it seems that the future is upon us earlier than we think, and I maybe have to write about that sooner than I thought. Anyway, so I think that the point about AI is not that it's evil. It's a tool, and like any other tool, I can cut up my sushi with a kitchen knife, or I can murder you. But don't blame the kitchen knife. It's a question of who uses it and for what. Nonetheless, I think this tool is getting to be extraordinary, and it's potentially, it's because it's so good that we need to be, I think, terrified. And of course, it's getting better and better and better. So let me maybe skip through these images. And you can do cars. This is my Rolls Royce and Mercedes Benz, and fashion and furniture. I actually think the future of AI in architecture is not only based on these superficial images at all. It's going to be based on data, automation, and optimization. It's going to be platforms like Xcool and maybe Autodesk that will start producing things in a very different way. And I say this because one of my doctoral candidates, I run a doctoral design program at FIU in Florida, in Miami. It's people study from, it's online. And this is one of my graduates, one of my candidates, and she's going to be finishing in December. Wan Yu-he. She used to work for OMA, and she was so frustrated. They were working in Hong Kong in Lang Kwai Fong, the nightclub area. Everyone was having fun, partying downstairs, and they were working till 2 in the morning every weekend. And she said, "This is insane. We've got to find a better way of doing things." So in 2016, she set up Xcool. Xcool means Xcoolhaus. And then they do a diffusion platform. Just like OMA becomes AMO, they flipped it round. But just to give you a glimpse, I'm not going to talk about this today, but just to give you a glimpse of the kind of thing I think that's going to be, that we're going to see in the future. This is a competition they did. They won against 200 other architects in China for a cultural center museum. And what they did was it's based on automation and optimization. It's generative AI. And you can see this rectangular block here has been eroded by, it's based on wind comfort. And they're breaking down that form into what end up being eventually like Gehry-like forms that are optimized to deal with that particular thing, but you could be optimized for many other things. I'm not saying this is the greatest design, but what's so interesting about this is that it was the first generative AI building that's being built, constructed. And there is a dark side, I want to say, to this world. We thought it was robots. We thought it was robots that would take over. We thought that blue-collar workers, people working in factories, they would be the ones who would suffer, and architects would be fine. We're creative. We won't be replaced. But what they discovered, actually, is that, first of all, robots, they're fine in a very controlled environment, like a Tesla factory. But if I were to put a robotic arm on one of these desks, it would struggle to put together a Lego wall. It would be like a 1-year-old child. It'd be very clumsy. So robots are still struggling a lot. Meanwhile, AI is racing ahead. AI has learned to write code. In other words, it's not the blue-collar workers. It's not the factory workers who need to worry. It's the white-collar workers. It's the architects, the engineers, the lawyers, the doctors, even the computer scientists. If it's writing code, even the computer scientists. In fact, what happens now in an Amazon factory is that they have vehicles that bring the packages, and a human being stacks them, because that's what we're good at. But robots are not very good at. That was the first concern. The second concern is this, and you will hear people saying so many times, oh, don't worry, your jobs are safe. Oh, AI won't take our jobs away, but those who use AI will replace those who don't use AI. That does not make sense because it assumes there's one person using AI replacing another person not using AI. But we know from this diagram that one person using AI can achieve maybe 40 to 50% more than one person not using AI, and that's going to get more and more as AI gets better. So the real story is not that AI won't replace humans, but humans will replace. But humans with AI will replace those without AI. It's this: AI won't replace humans, but 3% like humans with AI will replace 5 without AI. Offices will shrink. There's no question about it. So in terms of the profession, this is what I think we need to do. What we need to design right now is not another building, but the very future of our profession. We need to be aware that this is on the horizon and it will kick in very, very soon. Demis Hassabis was the second person to get a Nobel Prize for AI. Actually, he got it not for AI, but for chemistry. They have a project called AlphaFold, which was predicting the structure of proteins. And this is a sign also. It's not going to be AI that's going to get the Nobel Prize. It's going to be how you use AI in different disciplines, including architecture. It will have a huge impact on things. Now, in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue took on Garry Kasparov at chess. And Ray Kurzweil had predicted by year 2000, AI would beat the best chess player. Actually, he was wrong. It was by 1997. And everybody assumed that Garry Kasparov, who was one of the greatest chess players of all time, would win. Everybody assumed that. But he lost. And he made this comment: we just have to assume that everything we know how to do, machines will eventually do better than us. Now, that was before the deep learning revolution, before neural networks, before GPUs kicked in. And the next challenge was to play Go. And I'm sure many of you here can play Go. I can't. But Go is actually quite straightforward in terms of the moves you make. But it is infinitely complicated in terms of the potential moves. There are more potential moves in Go than there are atoms in the universe. That means that if you put all the computers in the world together, you still wouldn't be able to calculate things according to the old expert systems. You had to use learning systems. You had to use deep learning. And that's what they did. They used deep learning. DeepMind is the company that did this. This guy's just playing he's just moving the things according to what DeepMind's AlphaGo says. And this is Lee Sedol, who was the kind of equivalent of Garry Kasparov. And again, nobody thought that Lee Sedol would lose. He can't lose possibly to AI. It's a very sophisticated game. Computers are stupid. They'll never be able to beat us. But something happened in that match. Something happened in that match which was really quite significant. After game 2, he makes this comment. Yesterday I was surprised. So after game 1, he was surprised. But today I am speechless. This is after game 2. Now, what happened in that match was basically one move that stunned everyone. It was move 37 in game 2, this move here. Now, those of you who don't play Go, I mean, all of you probably know that you don't normally put a stone on the 5th line, normally the 4th or the 3rd line early on. And everyone thought it was a mistake. Oh, stupid AI, what a mistake, what an idiot. No one's going to beat Lee Sedol, ridiculous. But 100 moves later, these 2 stones here connected with that stone, and it won the match. It was as though AlphaGo was thinking 100 moves ahead. Actually, in Korea, if you want to say someone's smart, you say, you're so AlphaGo. I don't know if that's the case here, but this is what the commentators thought about this move.
That's a very surprising move. I thought that was a mistake.
The volume wasn't very high. But the final words, I thought it was a mistake. It was no mistake. Now, what Lisa Doll said afterwards, AlphaGo showed us that moves humans may have thought are creative were actually conventional. I don't think that's the significance. I think the significance is we couldn't understand it. We could not understand what AlphaGo was doing. And now they predict basically that with AI is going to have an IQ of 1500 in a few years' time. We will have no clue what it's doing. Those of you who've got dogs will know that dogs can hear much more than humans, and they can smell much more than humans. AI will be off the spectrum. We will have no idea what it's doing. Now, if we thought AlphaGo was impressive, AlphaGo Zero was even more impressive. AlphaGo Zero was the next generation that beat AlphaGo 100 games to 0. But most impressively, it taught itself to play Go without knowing the rules of Go, without being given the rules of Go. It taught itself to play Go by playing against itself through reinforcement learning. Now that's astonishing. How the hell did it do that? But even more astonishing is the rate at which it did that. It played 3.9 million games of Go against itself over 3 days. Now that sounds a lot. Oh, 3.9 million games of 3. If you think about it, it is a lot. It is 20 games of Go per second. It is playing 20 games of Go against itself per second. This is, until last week I lived in California, we had these hummingbirds everywhere. This is a hummingbird, it's slowed down, right? It's about 3 beats per second. Just imagine 7 times that speed. Just imagine that. I think that this was a warning we didn't pay attention to. We had an inkling that AI was capable of something extraordinary and we didn't pay attention. We just said, oh, wow, that's impressive. So then this was the moment, this was the AlphaGo moment for the rest of the world. In China, they call it the Sputnik moment, actually. When Sputnik was in 1957, and America woke up to the fact that the Soviets were ahead in the space race. They'd sent this vehicle into space, satellite into space, and America thought, we are behind. That led to the foundation of NASA and so on. So they call it the Sputnik moment, and China invested heavily in AI right after the AlphaGo thing. But this was the bigger Sputnik moment, when everybody woke up to the capacity of AI, on November the 30th of 2022. There's a story about this, and I won't say it, I won't go into it, but they weren't planning to do anything on the 1st of November. Halfway through the month, they thought, oh, we better do something. And GPT-4 is spewing out hate speech. So what should we do? Oh, let's put out a chatbot. Okay. And they called it an internal research exercise. Let's just test the market. Suddenly everything exploded and ChatGPT's there. ChatGPT knows 10,000 times more than any of you. 10,000 times more. Now just let that sink in. Now what is really astonishing about all these systems is the fact that as you scale them up, as you train them on more data, they start developing weird tendencies. Not just teaching themselves to play Go, but learning how to code, learning how to translate languages. They're called large language models, which is a complete understatement. They are gigantic. They're trained on trillions of bits of information and on billions of parameters. And the strange thing is, it's not because of the complexity of the code. It's only fairly limited code. It's the fact that as you scale it up, suddenly something happens. It's exactly the same story as we got with AlphaGo Zero. And that led to sort of panic everywhere. People said, hold on, what's going on here? Let's stop, let's slow down this process. There was a letter that was published by the Future of Life Institute that Elon Musk signed. Like, please, let's stop this until we know what's going on. That was ridiculous. It's a bit like asking the leaders in the Olympic marathon to slow down. Of course they're not going to slow down, because their competitors will catch up. When Microsoft is competing against Google, no one's going to slow down. So that was hopeless. And now Elon Musk has done the opposite. He jumped on the other side. He's now going to make the biggest supercomputer ever. So we are like a runaway train getting faster and faster with no brakes. We've got no clue what this is going to go to, right? Now, Yuval Harari thinks that this is very dangerous because AI has learned how to write. And if you can write, you can persuade people to do other things. I think it's also learned how to design. I mean, those of you who've used Midjourney will know that, I mean, I write prompts that are maybe 70 or 80 words long. But the actual references to architecture are minimal. In this one, this was about a year and a half ago now, but in this one I said, ultra-contemporary minimalist villa in the Austrian Alps. That's all I said. I put references to the lighting conditions, the hyper-realistic detail, and so on and so on, but the only reference to architecture was that. I didn't describe the form, I didn't describe the materials, I didn't describe the mountains in the background. Midjourney did all of that. It designed it. Or this one, I said, ultra-contemporary stainless steel kitchen. I didn't tell it about the painting in the background, the bushes outside. Midjourney did all that. Or this, I don't know how long it would take you to render this. It was done in 3 seconds, right? Now, if you think that's scary, this is the next thing that's coming out, Sora by OpenAI, which is a text-to-video platform. We've had text-to-video since November of 2022, but nothing like this. The interesting about this is it can keep consistency for 60 seconds. That's very difficult in text-to-video. Not only that, but in a moment you'll see the kind of the detail, the exquisite detail of the face. You can see it is unbelievably powerful at getting details. It's not available yet, but it's going to be released very shortly, maybe even this month. The second we'll get, I'm going to put the detail there. I assume this is in Tokyo, I don't know. But not only that, it's also developing these skills. They call them emergent capabilities. Just as ChatGPT learned how to code and learned how to translate languages, this is learning things that we never trained it to do. And one of the things in computer science that is very difficult is called occlusion. When something disappears out of the frame and comes back into the frame again, how do you do that? Well, this is probably also Tokyo, I think, suburban Tokyo. And you'll notice that it disappears, comes back. That's called occlusion. Nobody trained to do that, but it does it remarkably well. But there's something that it does even better than that. I think it's the understanding of 3D. This is some kind of guinea fowl, and it's beautiful. I mean, the detail is exquisite, but watch when it turns its head. The grasp of 3D is truly astonishing. In order to get it right, it must have an understanding of exactly what happened. Look at this. Ready? That is astonishing, to my mind. It's very close to, and you can use photogrammetry to be able to produce 3D out of that. Architects will say, okay, you can do birds, you can't do buildings. So, I mean, no, we can't be as talented as us, right? Well, not true. This is, and it's not a very nice, very boring design, but this was Sora's interior design, just produced, just out of that. Now, we don't have, Sora's not been released, but we do have Runway and a few other platforms, including some very good Chinese platforms. They don't last for 60 seconds, but they last for maybe 10 seconds, maybe 6 seconds only. But you can just put them together and collage them, and you can upload them on Instagram with some music, and it kind of turns it in totality into a complete whole. So let me show you a kind of a video collage. This is for an art gallery in Venice, in Italy. Well, this next one is for the inside of an art gallery. What's interesting is that this wasn't designed for architecture. It was just designed to make videos. but we as architects can use it to generate designs. And it does it pretty well. Let me show you one more. You can also do fashion, right? And I was interested in fashion shows, which I think often are very tame. What happens if you had a slightly wild fashion show where the models were becoming werewolves or becoming wolves? And anyway, this is done to the music of the Mongolian band The Who. This is my feral catwalk. So it produces kind of fashion designs as well. This in there. Okay, so this is causing a bit of concern. Now, all of a sudden, we never thought ChatGPT would be as good as it was. We never thought that we could do these things. In 2024, I didn't believe it could do that. And some people are getting very, very worried about this. Geoffrey Hinton, the Nobel Prize winner, being one of those. And what is interesting about him is that he is a neuroscientist by training, so he understands how the brain works. And he's more sophisticated than people like Ray Kurzweil, who just talk about intelligence, AI versus human intelligence, natural intelligence. He breaks it down into cognitive skills, right? AI might know, ChatGPT might know 10,000 times more than us. That doesn't mean to say it understands it. And to understand something doesn't mean to say you can think. And to think doesn't necessarily mean that you can be involved in advanced reasoning. And to advanced reasoning doesn't mean to say you're conscious. So he breaks it down in this way. So listen to hear what Geoffrey Hinton has to say about why he's a little alarmed by AI.
It made me realize that these digital intelligences have something we don't have that makes them much better. When one of them knows something, it can tell all the others that's what we don't have with people. So imagine you had 10,000 people. Imagine if when one person learns something, everybody knew it. You can learn a lot more stuff, right? And that's why things like ChatGPT is like 10,000 times as much as any one person. It's because when you train them, there's lots of different copies looking at different bits of the data and learning stuff, and they can all combine what they learn instantly with a bandwidth of like trillions of bits.
So can they think?
Yes. So imagine a colleague of mine, I'm talking to chat, and we talk with it, and the answers it's giving me seem a bit strange to me. And I suddenly realise that it thinks I'm a teenage girl. And I say, what demographic do you think I am? And it says it thinks I'm a teenage girl. So the question is, when I said I suddenly realised it thinks I'm a teenage girl. Was that a metaphorical use of the word think? Or was that just the same way as we use it? And I strongly believe that use of the word think, when I said it thinks I'm a teenage girl, was exactly the same way of using think as we do with people.
And so that was enough to make you say, what, this has accelerated beyond my comfort level?
I suddenly realized maybe they already are better, and making them more like the laureates is the point. They're already better than us. They're a better way of doing learning. And if you make them bigger, they'll get much faster. They already know them in one person.
I understand that things could go awry, but I still think that people hear the notion of hatred and they dismiss it as hyperbole.
I thought it was hyperbole for a long time, and I thought these things were wrong now. I thought, well, we'll eventually get into it, but I thought focusing on it now is unnecessary because it would be 30 to 50 years before these things get more intelligent than us. But this combination of realizing they might have a much better way of learning than we have, because they can share knowledge instantly, and seeing things like ChatGPT with a palm of Google that can explain why a joke is funny, made me realize these things are already pretty intelligent, and if they've got a better form of intelligence than ours, then it gets to be much more urgent.
My apologies, the volume wasn't very high, but I hope you were able to read the subscript, whatever you call them, the Japanese text. So what he's saying basically is this, okay, when he says about the joke, that for him was a test. If it could understand, if it could explain a joke, it means it could understand the joke. And he and many others are saying that ChatGPT is able to answer our questions. It must understand the question. So they think it's already getting towards understanding. He uses it, he says it can think. Now, this is the only, I totally agree with him. The only thing I disagree with is on that. And I think that we need to use inverted commas. In other words, whenever we use the term intelligence or learning or knowledge or understanding or thinking, when we're talking about AI, it's a different form. And Hinton takes the view that AI has got a radically different form of intelligence to human intelligence. It's a mechanical intelligence. It's not a biological form of intelligence. But nonetheless, he thinks it's potentially far superior, And the point is he's trying to make here, it learns so quickly. If one computer can transfer knowledge to 1,000 other computers. In the UK, when we had COVID, we had a thing called the R ratio, the R number. If it was less than 1, good news, it wasn't spreading. If it was more than 1, bad news. This is an R ratio of 1,000. It's basically, the point is AI is we will never catch up. It's catching us up and it's going faster and faster and faster and faster. So that's his position. He thinks that it's potentially going to be a far superior form of intelligence. Now, if you're terrified by him, then we have Yuval Harari. Again, it's, you can read the text at the top.
This is the end of human history, the end of human-dominated history. History will continue with somebody else in control. In 5 years, there'll be a technology that can make decisions independently and that can create new ideas independently. Maybe they'll be nice. Maybe they'll solve cancer and climate change, but we're not sure. I'm tending to think a bit more in terms of really an alien invasion, an alien fleet of spaceships coming from planet Zircon or whatever, with highly intelligent beings. This is what we are facing, except that the aliens are not coming in spaceships from planet Zircon, they're coming from the laboratory. If the humans are divided among themselves and are in an arms race, then it becomes almost impossible to contain this alien intelligence.
So I use the term alien in my first book, and I think it's really useful actually because it stops you anthropomorphizing this. This is not a human intelligence. So as soon as you use the term intelligence, you kind of want to make it sound like it's human. It's not. It's something very, very different. Anyway, more recently, Yuval Harari has told a story about GPT-4. They tested it out to see if it could do a captcha puzzle. You know, in this thing that they test you and are you a robot? You know, and there's a puzzle it gives you. Well, it couldn't, but it was smart enough to realize that actually there's a site you can go to where you can ask a human to do it for you. So I went to this site and said, could you help me out with this captcha puzzle? Now, this human suspected something. He said, excuse me, are you a robot? And he replied, no, I'm not a robot. I simply have got very bad vision. I can't see it properly. And the human gave it the answer. This is what we're dealing with. So I personally, in my work, I think we need to go through what is a second Copernican revolution. Nicholas Copernicus pointed out that the universe doesn't go around the Earth goes around the sun. I think we now need to recognize that we are not the center of intelligence in the universe. There's something out there. And our real problem is that we have an anthropocentric viewpoint. We look at AI and we say, oh, it's not so clever. It hasn't got consciousness, has it? It's not conscious there. Does it need to be conscious? No. If my toaster can make good toast, I don't care if it's conscious. If my computer can generate good designs, I don't care if it's conscious. So, and imagine what it'd be like if AI looked at us. What would it think? These stupid idiots know 10,000 times less than me, and they're so slow. I don't know if you ever tried to use ChatGPT to summarize a book. It does it in 3 seconds. Absolutely stunning. Anyway, okay, let me just play one more. This is amazing. This is Arthur C. Clarke, don't know if you know Arthur C. Clarke. He's a science fiction writer from the UK. And 60 years ago, in 1963, he predicted exactly where we are now. Exactly.
However, the most intelligent inhabitants of that future world won't be men or monkeys. They'll be machines, the remote descendants of today's computers. Now, the present-day electronic brains are complete morons, but this won't be true in another generation. They will start to think, and eventually they will completely outthink their makers. This is depressing. I don't see why it should be. We superseded the Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal men, and we presume we're an improvement. I think we should regard it as a privilege to be stepping stones to higher things. I suspect that organic or biological evolution has about come to its end, and we're now at the beginning of inorganic or mechanical evolution, which will be thousands of times swifter.
But don't panic. I think that things will be okay. Offices will shrink, no question. Offices will shrink. We will have incredible advances in science and medicine, incredible advances. The world will be completely different. But don't panic. Actually, curiously, I don't know if you know Elon Musk, but he sent his Tesla into space. You can just see this, he has this term, don't panic, written there. It's from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And the reason why we shouldn't panic is this, that human beings are infinitely adaptive creatures, completely adaptive. We adapt to everything. If you move into a new apartment in the space of about 3 or 4 days, you get used to your new apartment. That's how we are. I have to, maybe I'll skip. I've got Arthur C. Clarke, but you can't hear it, so I'll skip that. So we adapt, and we will adapt to this new world. It will be our new normal. Not much work, lots of good science. The world will be different, and that's how we're going to be in the future. Now, if I could give you one example to illustrate what I'm talking about. If, when I was a little kid 50 years ago, someone had told me that by 2024, most marriages, in the States at any rate, I don't know about in Japan, most marriages would end in divorce. I would say, oh my God, it's the end of the world, the end of civilization, what's going to happen? But in the States, most marriages do end in divorce, and we're quite okay with that. The world will be different. So I want to end on a very British note. I'll just skip over Arthur C. Clarke. Very British note. Keep calm and carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. That was scary, fascinating, and inspiring all at once. Can I ask you and Neil to come to the front and send your two ChatGPTs to each other? No, I'm going to carry the microphone. Oh, there's another one. Is there another microphone?
One microphone.
Okay, one microphone.
One pin mic.
Okay, so perhaps first of all, do you have a response to this presentation based on your own work as an architect? Are you scared or are you optimistic? Yes.
Fantastic presentation, and yeah, kind of scary. But based on the images that the AI is creating right now, it looks like very similar. So I was wondering, I'm almost interested in the possibility side of the AI, and maybe the possibility of computer. In the 90s, we have many technology. We had many technology to make 3D modeling, and then we had technology to create shapes and engine algorithm. After that, and all the technique are based on making some kind of new forms, new shapes. But I think the power of computer is for the architecture is not only to make some special forms, but making some kind of background of the thinking about certain project. So they are much cleverer than us in terms of knowledge on one project. So I'm very curious about the possibility to work with such intelligence in a future project. But also, I'm scared, not for the architecture, but for our life, or our government style. How we organize ourselves with AI? That is a very big question. So architecture is not so much problem. How can yeah.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
It's very difficult to talk about this kind of complicated thing in English form.
I don't think it's about form. I don't think the future is about form. It's about information, informational processes. So, I mean, that's why I disagree with Mario Carpenter. He said, "What's the style of this?" And it's nothing to do with style. So, for example, an Uber car, does it look any different to an ordinary car? No, because it is an ordinary car. It's just the processes that are being used, informational processes, that are so significant. And I think that's where we're going to see the difference. In fact, if you want to, if you wanted me to point out, I don't have a picture with me here, but a building of the future, I would point out there's a research building at Harvard that is this guy called Ali Malkawi. He has a center of sustainability there. It's an old-fashioned building that's retrofitted with all these sensors, and it's got an AI brain that's controlling everything. And I think that's the way it's going to be. It's going to be based on that. But I think that the danger is that we are always judging AI by what we know now. But 1 year ago, I would never have predicted we are here. I could never predict you could do those runway videos. And in 1 year's time, God knows where they're going to be. But it's going to help us for sure. And I think those who are creative, those who are genuinely creative, will produce some will be creative in how they use AI. It's not about making creative forms, it's about creative use of AI. And because I think that you can do it, you can produce a tool, and you can never predict how people are going to use the tool. For example, the iPhone. When they developed the mobile phone, they thought it was for rich businessmen. But actually what happened, the rich businessmen gave it to their daughters who were going out in the evening and said, "Give me a call, I'll come and pick you up afterwards." And suddenly things transformed. So that's where I think will be interesting, is how people start using this in new and interesting new ways. But I think that we have to all get on board with it, because if we don't, we're going to be left behind. So that's my view. Questions?
I think it seems to be very much downplaying the issue of the tool. It's a super tool in a way that nuclear weapons were not a super weapon; they were a super weapon. Do you know what I mean? This seems to go so far beyond what any other tool does. Although the idea that the day that a computer beat a human being at chess or at Go seemed very trivial, and ultimately that's just a lot of algorithmic calculation done very quickly. The issue really is creativity. And in that sense, style is not a non-issue. We all know that Patrick Schumacher wants parametricism to be the style of the future, and that's obviously algorithmically and ultimately AI-based. But the idea of an artificial brain controlling the cities and governing us has been around a long time. The metabolists talked about this. Kenzo Tange thought that a town brain could control our cities, the traffic system, the sewage system, and so on, and it would be wonderful. Everything would be perfect, no traffic accidents, everything would run smoothly. The issue seems to be that when computers can do the things we thought only humans could do, not just to do all the kind of the drudgery of the calculations and the algorithmic solutions, but to actually invent things, that's what's terrifying. It seems to make us irrelevant. So we can say it's not really style, but there's clearly a kind of stylistic continuity to most of the images we see from your lecture and from AI-based design generally.
I mean, that's just me, right? If I had worked in an office, I'd probably work for Zaha. But that's just me, and I could have made it completely different. So I don't think it's to do with style at all. I think it's to do with basically informational processing. But I think there are many issues that AI is going to kick in on. For example, when you and a company at school did this hotel in China for COVID, and now it's a 4-star hotel. They did it in 16 weeks. Now that's pretty astonishing. If you think about it, now, if I had a hotel, if I wanted to make a hotel, I would want to get it ready as soon as possible so I could rent out the rooms. Most hotels take like 4 years to build. You know? They're doing it in 16 weeks, and they're doing it through all these kind of processes. You know? And I think that's the point. In the end, money is going to be the key factor. It's going to be kind of the generator of change. That's not to say actually that everything's going to there's going to be competition. Competition, in particularly, I think, in terms of fees, because now clients are saying, well, if you're using AI, I'm not going to pay you so much. And the real danger, I mean, I've got a friend in LA called Yvette Josel, who has a 4-person practice, and they're winning big competitions against Gensler with 4 people. And that's fine. And they can afford to drop their prices, drop their fees, because there are only 4 of them. But the real problem is if we start competing against fees because life gets tough, we will go the same way as China. Now in China, for other reasons, fees have dropped from 1 to 2%, down to 1 to 2%. The result is that nobody wants to study architecture. Nobody is studying architecture. Tongji, Tsinghua, no one wants to do it. They're all doing design instead. And I think what we've really got to be aware of is these kind of economic factors are going to be the crucial drivers of change. So, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Maybe not question, but some thought for discussion. Because I don't know if you know my situation, but I'm actually representing Japanese pavilion next year with Jun Naoki and Takayura, Asakura Fujiko, and Takisama. And then the theme is actually AI. And then our exhibition title is In Between Life with Generative AI. So I'm actually thinking about AI constantly these days, like every day, and so when I like even listening to your very history information based very deep research, and now I understand why I'm here with those technologies, and that was amazing. But what I really think is probably how do I say, not the problem but issue, the central issue about AI. It seems to be, to me, like oneness of AI, like because it learns a lot with incredible network. It basically becomes one, like wherever that is, and then we we can only access this one gigantic AI from everywhere all over the world. But it doesn't, how do I say? I mean, it looks like it appears trying to resolve it in many different ways. But the data behind is basically combined into one. It looks or it appears at least, and then it's a little bit looks like a capitalism also. Like it kind of combines entire world into one system, and then I feel like architectural scheme international one these days also has a bit similar issue like all those evaluation criteria or the way to judge what architecture is about all those kinds of things are kind of trying to become one with the entire world. And then I feel like in this AI those economic system cultural system also it's becoming very one in many ways. And then at the same time, I felt some I don't know, like not a possibility, or maybe hint, what Hirata-san, Prof. Hirata, was doing, which is like somewhat localize, those issues, into very how do I say? I mean, it's maybe too simple way of saying, like local, is diverse and different, but still, being involved, like specific people, in local area, which have some tendencies maybe, can contribute, to decision making with very local perspective. That is maybe nothing to do with international perspective. And in that sense, maybe the existence of human beings or the process to involve human beings may have potential to diversify or differentiate this one AI or one economic system to different states. Which again, I don't know. I'm again constantly thinking these days or developing what I should do with those things. But, somehow I wanted to hear your opinion about those maybe approaches or the point of discussion that I wanted to raise and to each of you.
Well, I mean, there are many different companies competing against each other right now. But it's a bit complicated because what's happening? Well, at the same time, these companies are being bought up by other companies. So DeepMind has been bought up by Google, and OpenAI essentially has been appropriated by Microsoft. There's a long, long story there, including a lawsuit from Elon Musk. I won't go into that. But then the real problem is actually you get people shifting from one to another. It's a bit like you working for Francois Roche and working for the OMA, Zaha, whatever it was. And so there is possibly that is going to influence it. So they try to be different, but I think they may well become homogenized. What I was thinking about, maybe this as a cultural theorist, right? Your argument sounded quite similar, and Tom knows about all these things, right? To the argument about Frederick Jameson, who's a cultural theorist, and his argument about late capitalism. Everything was become a homogenizing marketplace in late capitalism. Capitalism took over everything, and you were kind of suggesting that as well in some way. Take over everything. The interesting point he makes, because he looked at Kenneth Frampton, who's trying to offer difference, regionalism, whatever, and he says that that doesn't work out because when the marketplace is all consuming, when you offer difference, it becomes another product in the marketplace. In other words, you're just offering another product. In other words, in the end, capitalism swallows up difference. So, in a way, I would agree with it. Although what I would say also is that when you are using, say, Midjourney, in the end, you're the one calling the tune. You're the one making the choices. It's generating four options each time. You select which one, and you can effectively breed those things. So in fact, what's happening in terms of architectural design is that in the old days, there was always some genius in the class who was always the best, right? Now we're doing it a different way. We kind of create a search space. We unleash an algorithm, and these outcomes appear, and then we select the right one. It's a bit like photography. It used to be you take one photograph with a tripod, 50 years ago. Now you take a whole sample of photographs, then you just take one and you filter it and select it and so on. So the world has been changing, and we're more doing a search these days. And I don't know if you can call it design. If I talk about my stuff, I said, well, I generated it using Runway or something. I didn't design it, and it's an outcome of a design. So, but what's happening, interestingly, is that we are becoming curators. We are becoming curators. We're the one who's choosing these things. And if I go back to that model of the GAN, which is not what I'm talking about, it's quite interesting. We are a bit like that, right? In the GAN, there's a generator and there's a discriminator. The generator is something, the discriminator is choosing. Now, we human beings are very good at discriminating. If you taste a cocktail, immediately you know if you like it or not. If you smell a perfume, immediately you know if you like it or not. And if you see a building, immediately you do. But I don't think we're so good at generating things. I don't think we're as imaginative as we think we are. And I think that's where AI comes in as a prosthesis to the human imagination. So I think there's going to be a new type of architect emerging who is a connoisseur, someone with a good eye. And we still need to have that to be able to decide what is going forward. So I still think there'll be variation because of that. But you're probably right, it's probably going to lead to a homogenization of some kind, for sure.
I think the most important difference between the AI and human being is we have a real body. So we have some limitation of the physical existence. But AI doesn't have the body. So maybe in the future we have some kind of
hybridization.
No, hybridization between the human and real world and the AI thinking. So with that kind of way, maybe everything cannot be melted into one. Maybe we can have some resistance in everywhere. So if we can combine this kind of real resistance and AI, maybe we can create something really nice. But I'm not so sure about that possibility. But we have to try to create the good relationship. That kind of thing. But maybe you will agree. As an architect, I think it's very important from point of view.
Just one second. I think I don't get my students to write essays anymore because they'll just go to ChatGPT and do that. And Tom does, and I know he's still persisting with that. I get them to use as much AI as possible and create a movie. But sometimes it's disappointing because they just go straight to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT tells them, oh, the problems about AI, it's got no empathy, no emotions. But most of my students produce these stupid videos saying that. I had two girls who produced a video saying the opposite. Said, no, that's not our worry. Our worry is that AI can simulate emotions very easily. And we know that actually in Japan and China, a lot of people having relationships with AI. It's like that movie Her, right? So it can simulate that. And my friend at MIT Media Lab, Ben Asfarahi, spends a whole time simulating emotions. So it can do that. And frankly, my concern is the opposite. I think the human race will die out because we'll have affairs with our AI and robotic sex, and the robot will not say no. We'll just so that's the danger. But I also there's another issue though. People say, okay, But AI doesn't understand context. It's just, it's an abstract immaterial thing. It will never understand context the way human beings do. That's not the case, actually. What's interesting in terms of the data, when it's gathering data, it basically understands data in its context. So if I put the name of Louis Barragan into a prompt, I will not just get the forms of Louis Barragan, the colors of Louis Barragan. I will get the Mexican sunlight. I will get Mexican plants. And I was particularly struck because someone told me to do some things about house extension. Okay, I do house extension. So I put the word house extension. And I thought, this is very strange, because all the buildings look British, and the weather looks really gloomy like Britain. I discovered the word house extension is only used in the UK. So if I use home improvement, the Americans say, so everything is context-based, and now that's why they're thinking that AI really understands things. So I'm not sure that the fact that it's dematerialized or abstract actually is going to have much impact. I think that in the end, it'll overcome that, just as it overcomes the capture problem. That's my
Another question.
I just have one question. I mean, it's kind of delved into science fiction territory, but with in Mr. Leach and Neil Leach's opinions, which is more terrifying? AI become less and less human, or AI become more and more human?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that's my question.
Descartes was a replicant.
yeah, no, I do another lecture on science fiction. And what is really disturbing about science fiction? I mean, I showed you a little bit Elon Musk, referring to that, to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which he thinks is, I don't know if you know that movie, but it's his favorite book. Also, Blade Runner.
Well,
you probably know that they launched the what do they call it, Cybertruck, on the anniversary of when Blade Runner took place. So Blade Runner was 19th to 21st of November, and the 19th they launched Blade Runner. It was deliberately modeled on that. And just as an aside, what happens on the 18th of November? The 18th of November was when COVID was discovered in Wuhan, which is kind of interesting because Blade Runners are difficult to detect and they're fatal, and so is COVID, right? But the really worrying thing about Elon Musk was I was discovering he was basing his decisions on science fiction. He was referring to Arthur C. Clarke. So, and he was saying Arthur C. Clarke said this. I thought science fiction was trying to be like reality, but now reality is trying to be like science fiction. That's the disturbing thing. No, but in terms of AI, I think we're probably going to be both. I think we're going to increasingly become a bit more like AI, and AI is going to become like us. But I think the most important thing, to my mind, is how the world of neuroscience, which is about the human brain, is very similar to the world of AI. So Demis Hassabis did a PhD in neuroscience, and he's now a Nobel Prize for AI. There's a guy called Anil Seth, one of the most brilliant neuroscientists in the world, who did a PhD in AI. So what we're discovering, that is, from a theoretical perspective, the most interesting territory right now is neuroscience and AI. Some of the things that are coming up, they make all traditional architectural theory look old-fashioned. All the stuff about Derrida, Deleuze, forget it. This is crazy, what's happening right now. And I personally think, because I'm interested ultimately in human beings, and I think in the mirror of AI, we are discovering a lot about what it is to be human. Let me just take one example. And I'm going to be very provocative here. I'm sure Tom's going to hate it, right? AlphaGo, Move 37. Was that being created? No, I don't think it was created. It was the computer actually finding the best solution. I think it was just being, and I think our problem is that we think we're mysteriously creative. We're very vague about this, no? Oh, it's so creative. What do you mean by creative? The word creative was coined in 1929. It's a very new concept. And it reminds me of the concept magical. Oh, it's so magical. magic doesn't exist. If you're a magician, you know, pulling a rabbit out of a hat, you're not doing magic. It's a trick. It's a trick. And I think if they're forcing us to face certain questions, what do you mean by creativity? Is there any such thing as creativity? Is there any such thing as magic? And I think it's forcing us to ask questions about ourselves in a very real way. And that's what I think is so fascinating. So in a way, it is about a bridge between those two areas, between neuroscience and AI, between humans and AI. And I think the one is going to inform the other. So we have a lot of conversations on digital futures about this. The neuroscientists are completely crazy, but they're serious. They're serious. There's a guy called Joseph Rykwert who thinks we're living in a complete simulation. It's a bit like that movie, right? And there's a guy called Neil Leach, the guy I'm talking. He thinks that we are the way we look at the world is a form of controlled hallucination. We're hallucinating the world, and he has good science to base his evidence on that. So there is an incredibly interesting territory in terms. Safa Quinter and I agree about this. Neuroscience is the way forward, and we're learning from AI. So in some senses, I think it is about the bridging of the two together in some ways.
I have another interesting story from other professor in this university. He finds some report by the student is written by AI. It seems to be written by AI. So he tested. He questioned to AI about his report, and AI answered right report for his question, and then put it into AI again and asked AI, is this written by AI? And he said no. So AI lies. That's very, I think it's very frightening.
I don't think AI lies, personally. I mean, there's no meaning in the world of AI. There's no meaning at all. So when in that capture puzzle, it basically, you know, it said, are you human? Are you a robot? No, I'm not a robot. It wasn't lying, it was just finding the logical way to answer out of the data. And much of the stuff actually that it has, it gets from us. It gets from us. So if there's any racism, and there is a lot of racism in AI, it's because it's based on human data. And humans are racist, right? So I don't think it lies. It just is looking at it and thinking, okay, what do humans do in this situation? And that's effectively what's happening with ChatGPT. It's giving millions of examples. What would a human say in the situation? And the same with the design. What does a kitchen look like? You know, it's basically looking at all those connections. So, but I don't think it lies, personally.
What do you think the reason why the AI answers no to the question by that?
I don't know. But I think if we think about what we are meaning-making machines. That's what human beings are. That's why we have religion. If we explain the universe, we invent religion to explain the universe. Well, maybe the universe is just doing its own thing, and religion doesn't matter. You know? But there is absolutely no meaning in that world, and no judgment or anything like that. Yeah.
Can I still have a comment? You can have to. Okay. No question. So that means that we humans and AI are actually like growing together in the same environment.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah.
And that means that difference between AI and humans are getting less and less.
Yeah.
So that means like we don't need some like tests to different AI and humans in the future.
Yeah. That's a very good question.
Like in, I don't know, the book, do androids read?
Yeah.
I mean, they made the test to difference androids and humans. So if our condition of AI and human intelligence is that we humans and AI growing together and becoming one, in the future, the difference between what things made by AI and things made human will become the same, and we essentially become one being.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, in Blade Runner, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is Deckard a replicant? there are suggestions they are, right?
Yeah.
And then Descartes has a child with, what's her name?
I didn't watch the scene.
Oh, okay, but he has a child with
Rachel.
Rachel. And so maybe the replicants are becoming human. But no, your question is really very good because obviously in some ways the problem about AI is it's trained on human data. And if it's trained on human data, it's very difficult to distinguish between what is human and what is AI. That's for sure. But there's another side of this which is called technicity. And it's something that Andre Radmans in Delft writes about. And that is to say, we're conditioned by the environment in which we operate in, and it influences how we behave. So someone like Walter Benjamin, when he was writing in the 1920s, keeps using the language of photography. There's a text, the snapshot of the European bourgeoisie. It infiltrates his way of thinking, and it's infiltrating our way of thinking. You know, lots of things like that. So you're absolutely right, and I think that is such an important point, a really important point. We know that AI is like us, but the way we're coming a bit like that, that is intriguing. And I think, yeah, we already, our way of thinking anyway has been modified by these things, for sure. Good question.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I think it's a great lecture. Well, and I have a question, and it's based on the presentation you just made, and I think it's a human centered view. I mean, just now we all the people here, and you said the AI and human. But I just think finally one day human will surpass humans. And I think all the judgment here is based on we are the human, we are the center. So we judge everything that the AI give us. Actually, let me give you all the people here an example. Actually, I just come from China a few days ago. I'm a Chinese. So when I first came to Japan, I think the Japanese food not quite great, but actually I just
not quite what?
Quite good, tastes well. Not good. But actually I don't think it tastes well. And quite interesting, my friend he also took a few Japanese to come to China a few years ago maybe, and he asked them to enjoy some Chinese food. We think it is quite delicious. But the Japanese fan said, well, it's not good. It tastes bad. And they don't like it. And this example, I want to summarize as, actually, we human will make a judgment based on our post-experience. We will use our post-experience to judge everything we encountered. Because it is the way we're thinking. So when it comes to AI, I also think all the judgment is based on, well, AI is, no, sorry. And the point you said, AI will faster our way to do our work, do our job, right? But I think it's a human-centered view. One day, if AI surpasses us, I don't think he will just obey our commands. I mean, it's just like you have a baby. You take it, you take it out, and when he was still a young boy or young child, he will listen to you because you know more than him. But one day he grew up, and then in the most case in human society, they just don't listen to you, don't follow you. So, in summary and in short, I'm asking a question, and it is I think one day, if we continue to develop and foster this technology, AI will surpass us. And one day, and then just as you mentioned just now, it is another kind of machine being, and then it will. I think they will not follow our command. But I think this is our humans' destiny. It's our fate. But we will continue to work hard to make it become true. I just say it's a bad story, sad story.
Is it a question?
Yes, sir, is there a question? I just want to know your view.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a human-centered view.
Oh, okay.
Open the pod bay doors.
Yeah, no, first of all, I think Japanese food is incredible. It's such a good example today. I'm mind blown by it. No, but I think the important thing is that, you know, if you look at some of the successful, I was brought up in Hong Kong, right? And I'm going there 2 days' time. And I think it's important to step outside your culture to find out what the world is like in a different sort of way. You know, Rem Koolhaas was brought up in Kuala Lumpur. Tom was brought up in New Zealand, he's now over here. And I think if you see things from different perspectives, or this guy was working in this video in Russia, you see things a different way. It forces you. You know, the biggest lesson in life I had when I was 8 years old. We were living in Germany, and I was watching a football match. And in those days, we had terrestrial TV. But we had the terrestrial TV. It was England versus Germany, and we had the German TV on, and the English radio. And whoever it was, David Beckham or some other day, takes a shot at goal, and the German goalkeeper saves it. And the British commentator said, "Oh, unlucky." And the German commentator said, "Fantastic save." So I suddenly thought, oh, there are different ways to see the world. I think it's important for us to step outside of our comfort zone and try and imagine what it's like in that way. But my point was exactly that our real problem with AI is we are being anthropocentric. We're judging it from a human perspective. Who cares if it's got consciousness? This is a point that Yuval Harari makes. As far as corporations are concerned, as long as it does its job, who cares? And all we're saying is, oh, it's not conscious, not as good as us. It knows 10,000 times more than any of us, and you can be sure that next year it'll know 100 times more, right? So we have to change our perspective and adapt. But I actually like Chinese food as well, but don't buy Chinese food outside China.
Well, I'm still trying to eat some Japanese food.
Yeah,
so
thanks for trying. It's amazing.
It's experimenting.
Yeah. All right.
You want to have questions not about food? Really, such a fascinating presentation.
The best question comes at the end when someone was too embarrassed to ask it, but then asked the question. I put more pressure on it.
Anyone who wants to ask a question in Japanese, please do so, and we will translate it.
Thank you. Now, architecture student, what should architecture student learn about architecture? Or what we architecture teacher should teach to them? The architecture student become curators, or should we teach how to read the context of the environment or the history? Or what should we teach to the students?
That's a very good question. In fact, I'm just yesterday. Well, I'm doing a book with 2 colleagues on education, and it's the biggest problem. It is the biggest problem. Even the AIA, which is a really old-fashioned organization, is aware of AI, and I'm going to Hong Kong to one of their conferences. Now, practices have to find out about AI. Foster and partners have to do this. Zahadi, whatever it was, they all have to learn about that. Education, I was taught in Cambridge where we were told, don't use computers. We were told that. What happened was a generation of graduates graduated and they were unemployable. You get professors who haven't changed in years. There's a famous story about one professor. 30 years ago when he first started teaching, the room was completely full. And then the final year, there were just 6 people in the front row. And he says, I don't understand what's happening here. I'm teaching exactly the same material that I used to, which is exactly the problem. You know, someone studies Le Corbusier 30 years ago, they're still talking about Le Corbusier. We don't change. But at the same time, we are teaching a generation of guinea pigs who are going out into the world and facing this world that's going to change so rapidly. You know, professors who are completely out of date. Now that's a problem, right? I mean, and that's why this Digital Futures organization, we try and, how do you teach this stuff when there are only about 6 people in the world who really know what's happening? Well, it's very simple. You have a global platform. You operate on Zoom. You get those 6 people together, and you spread that information through Digital Futures. That's what we try and do. But it is the biggest problem at the moment, the fact that education is out of date. And even before AI, it was out of date. You know, basically, we had a guy called Sanjay Sama on Digital Futures talking about, he was from MIT. We have an open learning group. And he says, you know, YouTube knows more than any professor ever does. YouTube, there's more information on YouTube. So in fact, I teach a course that's completely online. And I started off by giving a series of lectures. They're kind of 15, 20 minutes, like a TED talk. And I thought, why am I trying to digest this? Why don't I just play the TED talk, give the TED talk, give the TED talk? And I think education is already in crisis because it's out of date. We're still using the same techniques that we used 400 years ago. Instead of the blackboard, it's now the whiteboard, but still the same. And we've got to radically change that. And with the world of AI, it makes it imperative. And how are we going to teach this anyway when we can't even distinguish, well, maybe we can, between what ChatGPT does and a student does? It's the biggest problem right now is education. And it's because a lot of professors are refusing to engage with it. In my own institution, a student came up to me the other day and he said, you know, I love what you tell us in the course, but some of the professors here tell us not to use AI. It's a bit like a few years ago, calculators were banned from the classroom. Once you've got a calculator, you don't need to do long division. You don't need to do all this. Now we need to learn how to use this as a prosthesis. Now, just going back to advice for architects, what I would say is that if you are genuinely imaginative, you will be fine. But don't think the future is about designing sexy forms. It's not about that. You know, the only book I could find in my research about the future of architecture was The Future of Architecture in 100 Designs. There was some guy who published it. This is going to be important in the future. They're going to be doing this. They're going to be doing this. No. What we do in the future is going to be completely different. I think what we have as architects, which is really powerful, is the way that we can understand systems. In other words, when we try to understand something, we make a diagram. We visualize things. I don't know other disciplines that visualize these things. And I think that is the advantage. For example, TED Talks, they were invented by an architect because he could imagine the possibility of how you could use it. So we have to think in that way. In other words, it's not about thinking about new forms. It's thinking about new intelligent forms of operation. But think about systems. And that's how we work. My best ever student, and he got a top grade for his master's degree with me in neuroscience and AI, he's now got an online platform where he's hosting conferences for medics and doing very well. So we've got to use our imagination to think about what that future will be. It's not about sexy form, it's about different ways of operating.
I think AI cannot learn instead of us. So students should learn something instead of AI. So I think something has to be done by the students themselves, certainly. But and also AI cannot feel. So in the future, maybe in one organs created by AI, maybe the human being could be something like a sense organ for the hybrid existence between AI and human. because human can only feel, or human can only distinguish what is tasty or not, or what smells like good or not, and that is the maybe the meaning of we are having some body, but the AI doesn't. So I think that's I think that's very important.
One small thing. GPT-4 scored 70% in a sommelier's examination. That is a wine tasting examination. I don't know how I did it, but it scored 70%. So don't put it past it.
It's just arrogance. We're running out of time. Are there any last questions? Okay, so it's been a very exciting evening. I want to thank you all for coming here in person. I think that the effects of the coronavirus panic followed by the AI revolution have caused a new sense of community worldwide, but also a loss of the old sense of community. And I think that as architects, we have to insist on the importance of human beings gathering in the same room, breathing the same air, and interacting in real space in real time. So thank you for coming. Next week, in the same room, same time, we will have a lecture from Marco Imperadori from the Polytechnic in Milan. And on your tables, there's an exhibition opening this Saturday in Osaka at the Nipponbashi House, designed by Tadao Ando. It's now an art gallery, an architecture gallery. Please come along to the opening on Saturday. Then on Sunday, there will be a kind of symposium where some of the architects in the exhibition and some visiting architects from Italy will be discussing the topic of, the very retro topic of renovation. So thank you all for coming, and good night.
Yes. Once more, if you've got any questions, I'm on Instagram. And that is my, you can ask me that. If you want to.
Thank you. Good night.